Hello everyone, I am Adishta Subramanian and I am an intern at Law Minds. Today I am here to present my video on law of taxation and the Constitution of India. When we say taxation, the first question that pops up in our mind is what is tax? Tax is essentially a compulsory payment we as citizens pay to the government so that they can use that payment we paid as tax to invest on public works, providing the best facilities and infrastructure for us. It is essentially a benefit for us when we pay the payment to the government and they use it for public welfare, and again, yet again, we benefit from it. Tax system in India. Tax system in India is three-tiered. A federal system which includes the union government, state government, and the local government. The local government is further divided into municipalities and the panchayats. Two types of tax are levied in India: direct tax and indirect tax. Direct tax is when the tax is directly imposed on the individual and the individual himself or herself has to pay to the government directly. The burden cannot be shifted to anyone. Indirect tax. Indirect tax is one in which it is levied on the goods and services in which we as citizens or consumers consume. The tax is already taken from the payment which we make while we buy the goods and services. Next, the law of taxation and the Constitution of India. Constitution of India in its article 265 states that no tax shall be levied or collected except by authority of law, which means that there can be no tax imposed by anyone or any institution in India when it is not under the authority of law. It also states only the government of India, as per the Constitution of India, can levy tax on individuals and corporate bodies. The seventh schedule of the Constitution delineates the tax jurisdiction for the union, state, and both the union and the state. After, the 73rd and the 74th amendments to the Constitution gave local governments limited financial powers, which is yet again described in Part 9 and 9A of the Constitution. Distribution of powers of taxation. List 1, which is the union list of the 7th schedule of the Constitution, gives powers to the central government to levy tax, listed in entries 82 to 92b. List 2, which is the state list, in the yet again the 7th schedule of the Constitution, provides for the powers of the state to levy taxes, state governments to levy taxes, listed in entries 45 to 63. While the concurrent list, which is the list 3 that deals with both the powers of the center and the state, has no deal with taxation, and hence both center and state do not have any concurrent powers of taxation. Entry 97 of the union list, which is the list 1 in the 7th schedule, contains residuary powers of taxation belonging only to the center. There are certain constitutional provisions for laws of taxation in India. First, Article 265. This Article 265 states that taxes can only be collected if there is a law allowing it, typically made by the government, which means that no other tax can be collected if law does not allow it. This article also states that this must follow extreme constitutional rules. There was a case law in Tankul versus Simeri Shaili case where villagers paid money without any legal basis, but the money which paid was similar to tax. Although it was similar to tax, the court held that it violated Article 265, which requires taxes to be authorized by law. Yet again, in other case law dealing with Lord Krishna Sugar Mills versus Union of India, the government tried to add an extra tax on sugar merchants for not meeting export targets. The court said that this was illegal because there was no law supporting it. In short, the governments can't impose taxes without approval from Parliament. Article 266. This deals with the consolidated funds and public accounts of India and states. Consolidated funds means all those funds the government raised through loans, loan repayments, advances, etc. All these constitute consolidated funds. This applies to both the consolidated fund of India and the consolidated fund of a state. Money from these consolidated funds can only be used in accordance with the law and for purposes specified by the Constitution. This is specified under Article 266 of the Constitution. Article 268. The article outlines duties levied by the union government but collected and claimed by state governments. The duties. What is duties? Essentially the tax levied on the goods and services produced within India. These duties, although levied by the union government, are claimed by the state governments. Examples can include stamp duties, excise on medicinal and toilet preparations, etc. Despite being mentioned in the union list and levied by the government of India, these duties are collected by the states. These duties, however, collected by states do not form a part of the consolidated fund of India but remain with the state. However, when it comes to union territories, the government of India itself collects the duties. Now, Article 269. Article 269 outlines various taxes, how it is levied and collected by the union, and how the union distributes and assigns it to states. There was a case law in where MS Kalpana Glass Fiber Private Limited, Maharashtra versus State of Orissa and others, which refer to yet another case called Gyan and Dunkereli and Co. versus State of Rajasthan case. The appellant advocate argued that for determining taxable turnover, so taxable turnover is essentially the portion of tax which has to be paid from the revenue that has gotten from the business. He said that from the taxable turnover related to interstate transactions, exports and imports under the Central State Act should be excluded. This was one of the case law which underscored that the State Sales Tax Act is always subject to the provisions of sections 3 and 5 of the Central State Tax Act. Article 269 of the Constitution prohibits the levy and collection of tax on sales or purchases in the course of interstate trade or commerce. Interstate trade or commerce, my friends, please note that it is the transactions between the states in India. Article 269A. This was newly inserted along with 269A, where it allowed or gave authority to the government to levy taxes on interstate trade or commerce, which is the transaction between the state governments through a tax called IGST, Integrated Goods and Services Tax. This article also stated the two methods by which the states receive their share from the center through the tax collection. There were two ways, which is direct appointment, second through the Consolidated Fund of India. These are the two methods. So the direct apportionment is where a specified portion of the total net proceeds is directly allocated to states. Through CFI, which is the Consolidated Fund of India, where a predetermined percentage is allocated to states from the entire amount in the CFI. Article 270. Article 270 essentially talks and outlines about the provisions for taxes levied and distributed between the unions and states. 1. Second, tax and duties listed in the union list, except for those mentioned in specific articles, are collected separately. This means certain taxes are collected directly by the central government. This Article 270 also states that the union government collects taxes, surcharges, duties and cess on specified functions as outlined in 271 of the Indian Constitution. Clause 2 of Article 270 specifies how the tax revenue collected is divided between unions and states. Here, there is also a case law where T.M. Kannaiyan versus ITO, the Supreme Court of India, established a significant judicial precedent under 270. This significant judicial precedent ruled that income tax collected forms part of the Consolidated Fund of India and cannot be distributed between the centre, union territories and states under presidential rule. Moving on to Article 271. So Article 271 essentially deals with cess and surcharge, which will be explained further. Article 271 states that whenever the Parliament feels that it has to raise taxes or duties, it imposes additional surcharge or cess on them. The proceeds from these surcharges become part of the Consolidated Fund of India. The surcharge collection is solely managed by the union and the state has no involvement in it. So what is cess and surcharge? Cess is essentially an additional fee imposed for a specific purpose determined by the legislation charging it. This is given in Article 270 of the Constitution. Surcharge is an additional tax imposed by the union or the central government on already existing taxes for a specific purpose. Proceeds from both cess and surcharge contribute to the consolidated fund of India. Now, moving on to grants in aid. So, what is grants in aid? Grants in aid is essentially financial assistance provided by the central government to those regions which are in financial need, so that they can get this finance from the central government and better their positions. These grants come from the Consolidated Fund of India and are approved by the Parliament. Article 273. This grant, charged to the Consolidated Fund of India annually, replaces any share of the net proceeds of export duty on jute products to Assam, Bihar, Orissa and West Bengal. It exclusively deals with only these four states. It will persist. It also states that it will persist as long as the union government imposes export duty on jute or its products up to a duration of 10 years from its initiation. Article 275. Now, this grants is a parliament sanctions to states facing significant financial challenges and in need of assistance, which was already said before. These funds are primarily for the betterment of those regions and for social welfare, and also for enhancing welfare measures and schemes. They also support the initiatives for scheduled tribes in their respective areas. This is all about Article 275. Article 276. This article addresses tax imposed, governed, and collected by state governments. However, tax rates are not consistent across states and may differ. Examples include sales tax, VAT, professional tax, and stamp duty, etc. Article 277. Article 277 states that, except for specific cases like cesses, fees, duties, or taxes levied by municipalities or local bodies before the Constitution's commencement, taxes listed in the Union list can continue until overridden by new parliamentary legislation. It also has a case law which includes Hyderabad Chemical and Pharmaceutical Works Limited versus State of Andhra Pradesh. This case law essentially led the courts to clarify the difference between taxes and fees. The court clarified that taxes benefit all taxpayers while fees are earmarked for specific purposes. Article 279 of the Constitution. This article concerns the calculation of net proceeds. Here, net proceeds refer to the money left after subtracting the tax collection cost. So, what is tax collection cost? Tax collection cost is essentially the expenditure or the amount or the expenses incurred by the government in the process of collecting the tax or imposing the tax. This tax collection cost could include transportation costs, communication costs, etc. So this has to be determined and verified by the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. So net proceeds is what is dealt with in Article 279 of the Constitution. Article 282. Article 282 is typically used for special, temporary or ad hoc schemes with no restrictions on granting sanctions. This must be noted, with no restrictions. So we have a case law. The Supreme Court in Bhim Singh versus Union of India and others highlighted the historical presence of welfare schemes aimed at public welfare. This underscored the importance and the prestige of Article 282 of the Constitution. Also, the MPLAD scheme, which is a Member of Parliament Local Area Development Scheme, was one such scheme aimed at fulfilling development and welfare projects, outlining the directive principles of state policy subject to constitutional requirements. This Article 282 is essentially for the ad hoc schemes and welfare of the people. Article 286. This article provides for the limitations of states' power to tax in several ways. We have three limitations. States cannot impose tax on imports or exports, nor can they levy taxes outside their territory. 2. Only Parliament has the authority to establish principles for determining when a sale or purchase occurs during import, export, or outside the state. Parliament can restrict taxes. Third limitation states that Parliament can restrict taxes on the sale or purchase of goods of special importance, and state can only levy taxes on such goods subject to these restrictions. We have a case law. In this case of K. Gopinath versus State of Kerala, the Supreme Court ruled against the appellants. Essentially, the appellants wanted to challenge whether their act was under the nature of import, but the Supreme Court held that it was not under the nature of import, which led to the eventual appellants, eventually led to the appellants paying the taxes. Article 289 of the Constitution. So, Article 289 of the Constitution states that state governments are not subject to taxation by the Union on their property and income unless Parliament passes a law allowing such taxation. This means that Union government cannot impose any sort of taxes on the property or income of the state governments, but to a certain extent. Also, it may impose a tax when there's a parliament and the parliament passes a law allowing such taxation. Until then, the union government cannot impose tax on the property and income of state government. This is talked about in Article 289 of the Constitution. There are more tax related provisions which include Article 301, which states that trade, commerce and intercourse are exempted from any taxation throughout India except for the provisions mentioned in Article 302, 303 and 304 of the Indian Constitution. Article 302 of the Constitution empowers the Parliament to impose restrictions on trade and commerce in view of public interest. Article 303 empowers whenever there is a scarcity of goods, this article comes in play. Discrimination against the different state governments is not permitted under the law except when there is a scarcity of goods in a particular state, and this preference to that state can be made only by the Parliament and in keeping with the law. Article 304 permits a state government to impose tax on goods imported from other states and union territories, but it cannot discriminate between goods from within the state and goods from outside the state. The state can also exercise the power to impose some restrictions on freedom of trade and commerce within its territory. These are the provisions: Article 301, Article 302, Article 303 and Article 304 respectively. And the final and most simplest article, 366 of the Constitution, besides the mentioned provisions, Article 366 simply provides definitions for goods, services, taxation, state, taxes on the sale or purchase of goods, and goods and service tax, and so on. My dear friends, as a conclusion, there's a complex structure of taxation system in India, and this complex structure gets its extreme efficiency and it gets strengthened because of the constitutional provisions provided by the Constitution of India. And provisions of the Constitution of India also increases the efficiency and flexibility of the taxation system in India. This is my video on the taxation law and the Constitution of India. Thank you very much.